The vast expanse of the Theta Serpentis system was calm. Cold stars hung silent over the emerald swirl of the gas giant below. Among them drifted the proud fleet of the Korath Dominion, 112 battlecruisers, sleek and long, with hulls of polished obsidian. At the heart of the formation floated the Varkos Eternal, the flagship. Aboard her command deck, High Lord Admiral Crintal observed the distant shimmer of the jump gate on his holodisplay. He was an old warrior by Korath standards. 6 campaigns, 3 systems razed, 2 species forced into vassalage, and now, this pathetic backwater called Sol. A pre-FTL world that had suddenly, impossibly, achieved hyperspace technology and begun striking Korath scouting vessels. The High Lords were furious, insolent primates. Their fleets were primitive, their numbers laughable. The order had come down. Full punitive strike. Sol would be taken, its species enslaved. Crintal sneered. "Humans," he hissed. "They will scream like the others." His aide approached. "Admiral, our probes report an unknown vessel approaching through the outer ring. Transponder unrecognized." He raised a brow ridge. "One of their pitiful attempts at a warship?" "Perhaps. Size unknown. Signature is strange." The aide hesitated. "Massive." Crintal waved a clawed hand dismissively. "Send a wing of interceptors. I want it vaporized before it soils our battle net." On the outer fringes, 50,000 kilometers from the fleet core, Korath scouts deployed, sleek arrow-shaped fighters streaking toward the anomaly. They didn't return. Seconds passed. Then a wave of panicked comms burst across the fleet net, static, garbled screams, flashes of light. And then, they saw it. Every holodisplay in the fleet lit with the same image, emerging from hyperspace like a titan from ancient myths, a single, enormous vessel, gray, jagged, bristling with weaponry that seemed wrong. Not elegant, not graceful, brutal, purpose-built to kill. Her hull was scorched from previous battles. Her designation blinked in stark human lettering. UES Retribution, a Terran dreadnought, the first of its class. On the Korath flagship's bridge, silence reigned. Crintal stared, twin hearts thundering in his chest. "What is that?" his aide whispered. "Scan it," Crintal barked. "Find its weaknesses." But the scanners yielded only gibberish, strange alloys, power readings off the charts, weapons arrays their computers couldn't even categorize. Then the Retribution moved. Not with the stately grace of a Korath vessel, but like a predator lunging. Her main guns ignited. Beams of searing light stabbed through space. One cruiser shattered in a single shot. Another followed, then another. Crintal's fleet opened fire. Hundreds of plasma lances and torpedoes, but the Retribution's hull shimmered with layered shields, absorbing the barrage like a mountain weathering a storm. And then came the railguns, slugs the size of small ships punching through entire squadrons with terrifying precision. Within minutes, 20 Korath cruisers were gone. Thousands dead. The fleet began to falter, formations breaking, comms flooded with terrified voices. "By the stars," Crintal whispered. "It's a demon." His blood chilled. For the first time in his long life, a creeping terror clawed at him. This was not a foe he understood, not one he could defeat by doctrine or numbers. And then the human transmission came. A voice, deep, cold, male. "You have trespassed. You have murdered. You will now learn fear." Panic rippled through the Korath fleet. The sleek black warships, once the pride of a conquering empire, now drifted disorganized and reeling. Officers screamed over comm channels, trying to re-establish formation. But the human warship showed no mercy. UES Retribution cut through space, like a blade through flesh. Her engines burned with eerie blue light, propelling her forward with inhuman acceleration. A second broadside erupted, beams of raw energy arcing outward, dismembering another pair of cruisers. Admiral Crintal gripped the edge of his command chair, claws sinking deep into the alloy armrests. His twin hearts pounded in a syncopated rhythm that echoed in his ears. Never, never had he witnessed such violence from a single ship. "Status of the fleet!" he roared, voice raw with fury. His aides scrambled over shattered control consoles. 73 vessels still operational, but cohesion is collapsing. Units are retreating or engaging independently. Cowards! Fools! This was a fleet bred for dominance, now unraveling before a lone Terran vessel. "Rally them!" Crintal snapped. "Form defensive perimeter Theta 7. Overwhelm it." The aide hesitated. "Admiral, the warship's armaments surpass anything in our archives. Our long-range weapons barely scratch its hull. Close engagement is suicide." Crintal's eyes burned with defiance. "Do it!" But even as his command went out, the Retribution accelerated again. Her main guns rotated smoothly, targeting with terrifying precision. With a soundless burst of kinetic fury, hyper-velocity slugs ripped through a wing of corvettes attempting a flanking maneuver. The ships disintegrated, torn apart mid-turn. On board the human vessel, Captain Marcus Hale stood on his command deck, arms folded across his broad chest. His gray eyes were cold, calculating. "Targets neutralized, sir," his gunnery officer reported, voice calm despite the carnage. "Good," Hale replied. "Keep them running, drive them apart. They're nothing without formation." This wasn't bravado. It was war. And Marcus Hale was a soldier forged by war. He had seen firsthand what the Korath had done. Colonies burned, civilians butchered, orbital habitats shattered into debris fields. They thought humanity weak, primitive. They were about to learn otherwise. "Captain," comms officer called out, "enemy flagship has issued a rally command. Defensive posture forming." Hale's lip curled into a faint sneer. "Let them. Helm, bring us into optimal firing range. Gunnery, prepare Mark III barrage. Time to carve out their heart." Aboard the Varkos Eternal, Crintal's screens flared with warning glyphs. The human dreadnought was advancing, straight for them. "This is impossible," his aide whispered. "No vessel engages a fleet head-on." But the Retribution wasn't just any vessel. Her shield harmonics shifted mid-flight, adapting to incoming fire with AI-assisted precision. Plasma bolts dissipated harmlessly against layered fields. Missile barrages were intercepted by railgun turrets before they even closed. More Korath ships died with every minute. Crintal's mind raced. There had to be a weakness. Every enemy had one. His people had crushed dozens of species, ruthlessly dissecting their strengths, exploiting their flaws. But this ship was built for one purpose: to kill fleets. A deep dread gnawed at him. "Deploy the Raptor wings," he ordered suddenly. "All of them." The aide hesitated. "All wings, sir. They're our last reserves." "Do it." Dozens of hangar bays opened across the Korath fleet. Hundreds of small, fast strike craft, the dreaded Raptors, spewed forth. Agile and armed with high-yield plasma torpedoes, they were designed to swarm larger vessels. Crintal leaned forward, watching the swarm streak toward the Retribution. "Now we shall see if their steel god can bleed." On the human bridge, alarms chimed. "Captain, Raptor wings inbound. Mass swarm, hundreds of contacts." Marcus Hale's jaw tightened. "Finally, they're panicking." He turned to his tactical officer. "Deploy point defense network, full automation, load shock burst rounds." A chorus of confirmations echoed across the bridge. From the Retribution's flanks, hundreds of automated turrets deployed, sleek, angular weapons platforms bristling with sensors and rapid-fire cannons. The raptor swarm closed in, plasma torpedoes armed, claws extended for hull strikes. And then hell was unleashed. The Retribution's point defense grid activated, firing streams of superheated flechettes and EMP shock bursts. Raptors died by the dozens, shredded mid-flight or crippled by feedback pulses. Those that closed the gap were met by secondary coil guns, tearing through their fragile frames. Within 30 seconds, over half the swarm was annihilated. Marcus Hale watched silently, eyes narrowed. Increased turret cycle rate, no survivors. Another 30 seconds, and the swarm was gone. Space littered with drifting wreckage. On Varkos Eternal, horror gripped the command deck. "Raptor wings neutralized," the aide whispered. His voice was broken. Crintal felt the cold weight of inevitability settle upon him. No formation, no weapon, no stratagem had slowed the human warship. One ship, against an entire fleet, and it was winning. "High Lord Admiral," a junior officer cried out suddenly, voice shaking. "Multiple vessels breaking formation, captains requesting permission to retreat." "Denied," Crintal bellowed. "Any ship that flees will be executed upon return." But even as he spoke, more signals blinked across the fleet net, vessels spooling hyperdrives in desperation. The iron discipline of the Korath was shattering under primal fear. And then came another human broadcast. "You were warned." Hale's voice again, cold and merciless. "Now you will be hunted." The Retribution fired again. Her forward lances pierced the heart of the Korath line. The Skarven, a command cruiser, detonated in a cataclysmic chain reaction, its explosion sending shockwaves through nearby vessels. The Korath fleet began to fracture. Entire wings broke off in full retreat, hyperdrives spooling in panic. "Admiral," the aide whispered, trembling, we must retreat. This is no ordinary enemy." Crintal's claws trembled on his chair. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to save what fragments of his fleet remained. But his pride warred with reason. He was a High Lord Admiral. The Korath did not flee. And yet, one glance at the holodisplay told him the truth. The Retribution was accelerating again, toward them. I will not die here," Crintal hissed. His voice cracked. Order full retreat." The command rippled outward, but it was too late for many. The human warship pursued mercilessly, tearing through stragglers with brutal efficiency. One after another, Korath ships winked out, destroyed or fleeing into hyperspace. On the bridge of the Retribution, Marcus Hale watched the slaughter with grim satisfaction. "Cowards," he muttered. "You came to enslave us, and now you run." He turned to his helm officer. "Set pursuit vector. We're not done yet." "Aye, sir." Hale's eyes gleamed with cold fire. The message was clear. This was only the beginning. The remains of the Korath fleet scattered like frightened prey across the Theta Serpentis system. Dozens of battlecruisers jumped blind into hyperspace, fleeing in chaotic vectors. Others limped away under the weight of catastrophic damage, trailing burning plasma and twisted wreckage. But one ship did not run. At the heart of the chaos, Varkos Eternal still hung in space, its hull scorched, defensive screens flickering. Admiral Crintal stood alone on the dimmed bridge, shoulders hunched beneath the heavy cloak of failure. His officers were gone, most dead. The rest had fled in escape pods or joined the rout. Only his aide remained, pale, trembling. "Admiral," the young officer pleaded, "please, we must jump. The humans will be upon us any moment." Crintal's claws curled, his pride burned hot enough to sear flesh. But beneath that fire, cold understanding. This was no longer a battle, it was an execution. Still, he could not run. Not now, not after what had been witnessed. If word spread, If it reached the High Lords that the Dominion's grand fleet had been shattered by a single Terran warship, the Korath would lose more than ships. They would lose fear, and the Korath ruled through fear. "No," Crintal rasped. His voice was little more than a growl. "If I flee, the Empire dies." He straightened, forcing steel into his spine. "Transmit to the human vessel. Open a channel." The aide's eyes widened. "Admiral!" "Do it!" Aboard UES Retribution, Marcus Hale stood at the forward display as the last enemy signals blinked out across the starfield. The hunt had been swift, merciless. 17 more Korath vessels destroyed in pursuit. Dozens fled into the dark beyond, but one signal remained: Varkos Eternal. The Terran crew watched in tense silence as an incoming transmission request appeared on the main screen. Hale narrowed his eyes. "Put it through." The viewscreen shimmered, revealing the battered bridge of the Korath flagship. Smoke choked the air. Flickering power conduits cast long shadows, and at its center, the towering form of Admiral Crintal stared back with burning yellow eyes. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Crintal's deep voice rumbled across the channel. "Human, this is High Lord Admiral Crintal of the Korath Dominion." Marcus Hale folded his arms, gaze hard. "I know who you are." Crintal bared his fangs, not in a snarl, but in bitter amusement. "So, it is true. Your kind breeds warriors, after all. Not prey." Hale's lip curled. "You learned that too late." A low, guttural chuckle. "Indeed." Crintal's gaze sharpened. "I would speak before the end. Warrior to warrior." Hale tilted his head, studying the alien admiral. Pride clung to him still, but it was the pride of a dying beast. A creature who knew the kill stroke was near, yet refused to grovel. "Speak," Hale said coldly. Crintal's shoulders straightened. "You think this a victory, human, but this is only the first blow. The Dominion will come again, greater in number, greater in fury." Hale's gaze did not waver. "And they will burn like the rest." "Arrogant," Crintal growled, "yet earned." His eyes flicked to the data feeds behind him, burning wreckage of his fleet. "I have fought 100 wars. I have broken species that rose against us, but never—" His voice lowered. "Never have I seen a vessel such as yours." Hale said nothing. He didn't need to. The message had already been sent, in the wreckage that littered Theta Serpentis. But Crintal pressed on. "You are not like the others. You do not beg. You do not flee. You built this machine of death. Why?" For the first time, Hale's eyes darkened, not with hate, but memory. He stepped forward. "Because you slaughtered our colonies," he said, voice iron. "Because you butchered civilians. Because your kind thought we would kneel." The words struck like hammer blows. Crintal's gaze flickered. A flicker of something. Perhaps understanding. Perhaps respect. Then it is vengeance. "No," Hale said coldly. "It's justice." Silence hung between them, two warriors on opposite sides of a blood-soaked gulf. Finally, Crintal gave a slow nod. "Then know this, human. You have won this day, but the Korath do not forget. When next we meet, it will be war beyond your imagining." Hale's stare was ice. "We'll be ready. See that you are." Without another word, Crintal cut the channel. Aboard Varkos Eternal, the Admiral exhaled slowly. His aide trembled beside him. "Admiral," the officer whispered. "What now?" Crintal gazed out at the darkened stars. "Now, we carry the truth home." He turned, voice low. "Prepare the emergency jump. Set coordinates for Korath Prime." The aide's eyes widened. "But the jump core—" "Do it!" Crintal ordered. "I will not die here. Not today." On the Retribution's bridge, tactical alarms flared. "Captain, enemy flagship is spooling an emergency hyperjump." Marcus Hale's gaze sharpened. "Target engines, fire." But the battered Varkos Eternal had anticipated the strike. Plasma vents burst from her hull, masking her core. The next instant, she was gone. A ragged jump signature echoed in her wake. The bridge fell silent. Hale's jaw tensed. He turned to his comms officer. "Trace the jump vector." "Already working, sir." Hale stared at the empty space where the Dominion flagship had vanished. His voice was a quiet growl. "Run, Crintal. Run back to your masters. Tell them what you saw." Hours later, the Retribution hung silent over the battlefield. Salvage teams moved among the wreckage, gathering data, recovering enemy technology. Hale stood alone at the observation deck, eyes on the ruined starfield. Commander Briggs approached, an older, scarred veteran. "Captain, debrief complete. Casualty reports, minimal. The ship held perfectly." Hale gave a slight nod. She was built for this. Briggs hesitated. "And the Korath? They'll come back." Hale's gaze did not move from the stars. "Good." Briggs frowned. "You want that fight?" Hale's voice was cold steel. "I want them to know. Every time they look at the stars, I want them to remember this day, and the next after that." He turned, eyes burning with grim purpose. "We're not prey. We're not slaves. We are the nightmare they never saw coming." Briggs gave a hard smile. "Damn right, sir." Hale's lips twitched, something between a smirk and a promise. Then he straightened. "Prepare the fleet-wide broadcast." "Aye, sir." Moments later, his voice echoed across the Terran military channels. Clear, cold, unwavering. "This is Captain Marcus Hale of the UES Retribution. Mission complete. Enemy fleet routed. Let it be known, Terra stands, and we will not bow." He paused, voice dropping to a lethal tone. "To any who would threaten our worlds, remember what happened here." The channel closed. Far away, deep in the dark reaches of the galaxy, Varkos Eternal emerged from hyperspace, burned, broken, but alive. And aboard her battered bridge, High Lord Admiral Crintal prepared his final report. His claws hovered over the transmission pad. His voice was hollow yet resolute. "To the High Lords of the Dominion, I bring grave news. The humans have awakened. They are not what we believed. They are war-born, and if we do not change, we will burn." He closed the message, eyes haunted by the image of that terrible gray warship. UES Retribution. A name that would now echo in the nightmares of an empire. The council chamber of Korath Prime was a place few beings in the galaxy would ever dare to enter, and fewer still would survive leaving. The ceiling arched high above, a vault of black iron, inlaid with the bones of conquered enemies. The 12 High Lords of the Dominion sat in a circle of jagged thrones, each carved from the hulls of fallen warships. And now they listened in cold silence to the final transmission of High Lord Admiral Crintal. The projection of the Admiral, flickering with static, stood before them, scarred, weary, his eyes burning with hard truth. "The humans are war-born. They have constructed weapons beyond any known class. A single Terran warship routed the fleet of Theta Serpentis. They do not beg. They do not run. They will fight us." Static hissed. The recording ended. A heavy silence followed. At last, High Lord Vector, Lord of the Second Conquest Armada, let out a snarl. His voice was gravel and venom. "Cowardice!" He spat on the floor. "Crintal was weak. No species rises so quickly. His words are defeatist rot." Others murmured agreement. The Korath had ruled by strength for millennia. They had shattered stellar nations and enslaved entire races. The idea that primitive humans, newcomers to galactic war, could resist them was heresy. But not all voices were so blind. High Lord Zeranzul, the eldest among them, leaned forward on his throne. His eyes were slitted, cold with the weight of long wars. "I knew Krintal," he said softly. "He was no coward. If he sends such a warning, we must heed it." A younger lord hissed, "You would counsel fear?" Zeranzul's gaze snapped to him, a look that had silenced more than one challenger in the past. "I counsel wisdom," he said. "You would do well to remember it." The chamber stirred. Pride clashed with instinct. Finally, the Supreme Lord rose, taller than them all, draped in crimson-scaled armor. His voice boomed across the chamber. "Enough!" Silence fell like a blade. The Supreme Lord's eyes gleamed with dark purpose. "The humans must be tested again. If they have built such a vessel, we will face it with greater force." A clawed hand gestured. "Summon the 10th Conquest Armada. Let it burn a path to Sol, and let us see if these primitives can truly stand against the might of the Dominion." Word of the defeat at Theta Serpentis spread like wildfire across Terran space. But it was not a tale of fear. It was a tale of vengeance, of triumph. One human warship had shattered an entire Korath fleet. For the first time in human history, the people of Earth looked to the stars not with dread, but with defiance. In orbit over Mars, within the massive dry dock station Vanguard, Captain Marcus Hale stood on a catwalk, gazing up at the towering hull of UES Retribution. Repair crews swarmed across her battered frame, patching armor, replacing weapon arrays. Commander Briggs approached, datapad in hand. "Captain." Hale didn't turn. His eyes remained on the ship, the war beast that had defied an empire. "Report." Briggs handed over the datapad. "Fleetcom intercepted new chatter from Korath space. They're mobilizing. Big. Scouts report a second armada, 10th Conquest Fleet, jumping toward Terran sectors." Hale's gaze hardened. "How long?" "Estimates, 3 weeks until first contact. They're moving fast." A grim smile touched Hale's lips. "Good. Let them come." Briggs hesitated. "Sir, this fleet will be bigger. They won't underestimate us this time." Now Hale turned, eyes cold steel. "Neither will we." He gestured to the dock below, where crews were loading prototype weapon cores into the Retribution's main batteries. "Project Ares is fully online," Hale said. "Enhanced shield modulation, new Mark 7 railguns. The next fight will not be even." Briggs nodded slowly, a fierce grin creeping over his weathered face. "Terra fights." Hale's voice was a low growl. "And we finish what we started." Across the outer Terran colonies, the call to arms spread. Reserve fleets were activated. Planetary defense grids powered up for the first time in decades. Civilian yards churned out strike craft and gunships around the clock. But even among the military, the truth was clear. Retribution would be the tip of the spear again. Her legend had already begun to grow. In dark bars and fleet mess halls, soldiers whispered of the dreadnought that killed a fleet, of the captain who gave no quarter. Marcus Hale knew this weight, and he bore it willingly. 3 weeks later, deep space along the outer Orion defense line. Sensors blazed red across every station. Korath 10th Conquest Armada. Arrival confirmed. 70 capital ships, hundreds of escorts, planet-cracking siege platforms, a force designed to overwhelm, to drown resistance in fire and steel. And at its heart, High Lord Vector's flagship, a leviathan of a vessel, bristling with weapons. On board the Retribution, Marcus Hale stood at the central display as the enemy fleet emerged from hyperspace. The Terran Defense Fleet held formation nearby, 3 carriers, 6 battleships, and support wings, a force respectable by human standards, but dwarfed by the Dominion Armada. Comms crackled. Admiral Foster's voice came through, hard-edged. "Captain Hale, you know the plan. Retribution punches the line. We follow through. Hale's reply was calm. Understood, Admiral. We'll open the door. On the Korath flagship, High Lord Vector watched the Terran fleet with contempt. Primitive fools, he growled. They dare form a battle line before us. His weapons officers stood ready. Shall we commence planetary bombardment once we break them? Vector's jaws split in a cruel grin. Number, I want prisoners. I want their captain brought before me. This Hale they whisper of. But Marcus Hale had no intention of being captured. His voice rang out across the Retribution's bridge. All hands, battle stations, prepare for primary assault run. Crew locked down positions. Shields surged to full power. Massive railguns charged with magnetic fury. Hale's eyes burned as the enemy fleet loomed. Time to teach them again. The battle began. Space lit with fire as both fleets clashed. Plasma bolts, torpedoes, beams of light crisscrossed the void. Ships died in screams of ruptured metal. But then came the Retribution, a juggernaut cutting straight through the enemy formation. Her railguns fired in relentless cadence, one Korath cruiser torn apart with each volley. Enhanced shields absorbed wave after wave of fire. New EMP warheads crippled entire wings of enemy fighters, and Hale drove them deeper. No retreat, he ordered. We go through. Aboard the Korath flagship, Vector's rage boiled. How is one ship doing this? Concentrate fire, kill it! But it was too late. The Retribution had already closed the gap, her main guns aligned, firing a salvo that pierced straight through the flagship's bow, gutting decks and setting fires that no Korath crew could control. On the human bridge, Hale's gaze was unflinching. Target engines, end it. Another strike, and the Korath flagship's core detonated in a sun-bright explosion. Vector's final scream was lost in the fire. Across the battlefield, Korath ships faltered. Without their flagship, without leadership, panic took root. The Dominion's second armada began to break, and Marcus Hale gave the final command. Pursue, no survivors. When the guns finally fell silent, Retribution floated amidst the wreckage of yet another slaughtered armada. Marcus Hale stood at the observation deck, gaze cold as the void. Briggs approached. Sir, we did it, again. Hale's reply was a growl. And they'll keep coming. So will we. His eyes burned with grim resolve. We're not done, not until the Dominion learns one truth. Briggs frowned. What truth, sir? Hale's lips curled in a thin, deadly smile. That humanity will never kneel. The ruins of the 10th Conquest Armada still drifted through Terran space like a graveyard of shattered arrogance. Scorched debris tumbled endlessly, silent witnesses to a massacre the Korath Dominion had never imagined possible. But even as Terran crews salvaged what they could, and the Retribution underwent repairs at Mars' orbit, a darker storm gathered in the depths of Korath space. The Dominion was an empire forged in conquest, ruled by warlords whose authority rested upon an unbroken chain of victories. Now that chain was cracked, 2 armadas destroyed, by humans, and in the throne city of Vorkon, beneath the great blood-iron spires, the Supreme War Council convened in secret. Not the High Lords, not the politicians, the generals, the true architects of war. In a chamber lit only by red glyphs, they stood, hulking figures armored in dark warplate, scarred veterans of centuries of bloodshed. At their center stood War Master Kortal, no admiral, no court noble, a killer, a soldier bred for one purpose. He had watched from the shadows as Krintal's fleet burned, as Vector's pride was gutted in the void. Now the old ways would end. He gestured to the holomap. You see the result, he growled. 2 fleets destroyed. Human technology surpasses what we believed. Their war leaders do not fear us. A general snarled. The High Lords would waste more fleets in pride. Kortal's eyes gleamed cold. No more fleets, not yet. He keyed the next display, schematics of Terran warships, the Retribution at its center. One ship humiliated us, one captain crippled our doctrine. A rumble of agreement filled the chamber. Kortal leaned in. We will not fight them in lines, not in grand armadas. We will bleed them in the shadows. We will strike at their worlds, their leaders, their supply chains, one blow at a time. His voice darkened. And when they are weak, when their champion falls, then we will crush them. 2 weeks later, deep within Terran frontier space, the first blow struck. The colony world Eden's Reach was a thriving outpost, population 50,000, home to one of the largest antimatter refineries in the sector. No one saw the Korath strike force approach, stealthed, silent, surgically precise. In a single coordinated assault, orbital defenses were neutralized, ground forces descended, civilians were butchered. The refinery was destroyed in a firestorm that lit the upper atmosphere. By the time Terran reinforcements arrived, only smoldering ruins remained. A single message was left, carved into the planetary relay tower. You will bleed. On Mars, Marcus Hale read the report in cold silence. Commander Briggs paced nearby, rage in his voice. Civilians, Captain. They're going after our colonies now. Cowards! Hale's jaw tightened. The images of the massacre were burned into his mind. Bodies in the streets, the blackened shell of the refinery. He spoke low, dangerous. This was not a random strike. They're adapting, changing tactics. Briggs cursed. So we hunt them, make them pay. Hale's gaze sharpened. We will, but not with half measures. They think shadows will save them. We'll drag them into the light. He rose. Ready the Retribution, and inform Fleetcom. I want full clearance for deep strikes into Korath space. Briggs blinked. You want to take the fight to them? Hale's eyes burned. Yes. No more waiting. No more defense. We strike back. In the heart of Terran Military Command, Admiral Foster listened as Hale made his case. The old admiral studied the young captain. Stone-faced, hard-edged, eyes that had stared down death and did not flinch. When Hale finished, Foster leaned back. This is dangerous ground, Marcus. Korath territory is vast. Their core systems are heavily defended. Hale's reply was cold steel. And if we sit here, they'll bleed us dry, one colony at a time. Silence. Finally, Foster nodded. Permission granted. You'll lead the first strike wing. Hit their supply lines, force them to respond. A grim smile touched Hale's lips. Understood. Days later, UES Retribution entered hyperspace once more, accompanied by a spearhead task force. 2 heavy cruisers, 6 destroyers, and stealth recon vessels. Their mission? Strike deep into Korath logistics routes, disrupt their war machine, hunt their predators. Weeks of raids followed, convoys ambushed, weapon platforms destroyed, listening posts gutted. Retribution earned new scars, but her name spread like wildfire through Korath space. Crews whispered of the gray death that came from nowhere, leaving only wreckage behind. And Marcus Hale gave no quarter. Every strike was a message. You are not untouchable. But the Korath were no fools. Kortal watched each report with narrowed eyes. He gathered his elite, a shadow unit known only as Blood Reavers, hunters of captains, assassins of fleets. Their mission, kill Marcus Hale, cripple Retribution, break human spirit. The trap was set. A falsified convoy, a baited target deep within a Korath frontier system, weakly defended, too perfect, and the humans took it. UES Retribution emerged from hyperspace, scanners active, crew tense. Briggs eyed the data. Looks clean, sir. Too clean. Hale's instincts burned. A chill crawled up his spine. Hold position. Full combat readiness. Moments later, the ambush struck. Stealthed cruisers decloaked, plasma mines detonated, boarding pods launched toward the Retribution's hull. Alarms howled. The ship rocked under the assault. On the bridge, Hale was a statue of focus. Countermeasures, fire, full-point defense. Guns blazed, boarding pods shredded mid-flight, but some struck, locking onto hull sections. Korath Blood Reavers breached inside. In the lower decks, the battle became savage. Terran Marines fought hand-to-hand, blades and plasma in the dark. Blood Reavers were no ordinary troops. They moved with terrifying speed, armor bristling with weapons. But human Marines were hardened by a war they refused to lose. Marcus Hale did not remain on the bridge. Grabbing a rifle, clad in combat armor, he led a strike team into the lower decks himself. "We hold this ship, or we die on it," he told his men, and they fought, room by room, deck by deck. Blades clashed, plasma hissed, blood slicked the steel floors. In the engine core chamber, Hale faced the Blood Reaver commander, a towering figure with twin plasma blades. No words passed, only steel intent. The duel was brutal. The Reaver moved like a shadow, but Hale was faster, harder, driven by a cold fury that would not break. He baited an opening, then fired point blank. The Reaver fell, burning. Hours later, the Retribution emerged battered, but alive. The enemy ambush shattered. The Blood Reavers slain. On the bridge, Hale wiped blood from his gauntlet. Briggs approached, bruised but grinning. "Trap failed. We're still here." Hale's reply was a growl. "And now they know. They can't kill us in shadows either." He turned to the helm. "Plot course. Deeper into their territory. We're not finished." The UES Retribution drifted in the cold dark between stars, deep inside Korath territory now, far beyond friendly lines, beyond Terran sensor nets, past the last known beacons. She was wounded but unbroken. Her hull bore the scars of the Blood Reaver ambush, plasma scorches, jagged tears along her flanks, whole decks sealed off from the vacuum. But her engines still burned blue. Her guns remained hot. Her captain, Marcus Hale, still breathed. And now, they were hunting. Not for convoys, not for border worlds, for the heart of the beast itself. On the bridge, the lights were low. Every officer was wired tight, eyes hollow from too many sleepless shifts. But no one broke. Not under this captain. Marcus Hale stood at the forward display, arms folded, eyes fixed on the shifting Korath star charts. "Target identified," Briggs reported. His voice rasped from fatigue but burned with purpose. "Vorkon Sector Relay Nexus, critical communications hub for the Inner Dominion." Hale's gaze narrowed. "Defenses?" Briggs pulled up the data feed. "Heavy static garrisons, multiple cruisers, orbital platforms. But if we take that nexus down, we cripple their war coordination for months." Hale's jaw set. "Then we hit it." A murmur ran through the bridge crew. To strike so deep, against a hardened nexus, that was madness. But Hale wasn't asking for opinions. He turned slowly. His voice was low, iron. "They think they're safe in the core. They think we won't dare. They're wrong." He swept a cold gaze across the crew. "We go in fast, hit hard, and we break their spine. No half measures, no retreat." And no one argued, because this was Marcus Hale's ship. And after what they had survived, there was no room left for fear. 2 days later, the Retribution coasted silently into the Vorkon sector. They had taken the long road, through dead systems and collapsed jump relays. The Korath would never expect a Terran warship here. But surprise alone wouldn't be enough. "Final systems check," Hale ordered. Shields came online, cannons spun up, missile bays loaded, engine shrouds pulsed, ready for sudden bursts of speed. Every crewman strapped in. Every Marine checked weapons twice. because this would not be a hit and run. It was a raid of annihilation. The Korath Nexus came into view, a vast station of black iron and spiked towers suspended over a molten world. Defense platforms bristled with guns. Patrol ships circled lazily, unaware of the hunter in their midst. On the bridge, the tension thickened as Hale gave the final order. Engage. The Retribution surged forward on silent drives. Her first volley was surgical, railgun slugs piercing 2 enemy frigates before alarms could sound. Debris rained down on the molten planet below. Then her full batteries opened fire, plasma lances slashing through orbital platforms, cutting them apart like butcher's blades. The enemy fleet scrambled, too late. Kill everything that moves, Hale ordered, voice cold. No survivors. The battle became a slaughter. The Korath had numbers, but they had never fought a ship like this. Never fought a captain who refused to fear them. The Retribution dove between enemy formations, her shields flashing under withering fire. Countermeasures decoyed plasma salvos. Her guns fired in relentless rhythm. 1, 2, 3 ships gone with every pass, and still she pressed closer, toward the heart of the Nexus. On the enemy command deck, Korath warlord Jakor watched in disbelief as his ships died one after another. "Impossible," he snarled. "One ship cannot do this." But it was happening. His forces were crumbling. In desperation, he ordered planetary defense weapons activated. "Burn them from orbit!" On the Retribution, alarms chimed. "Planetary cannons charging." Marcus Hale didn't flinch. His voice was ice. "Target their power cores. We end this now." The Retribution's main batteries swung toward the station itself. With a thunderous salvo, railgun slugs slammed into the Nexus's power grid. Explosions ripped through its core towers. The entire station shuddered, fires blooming across its length. Planetary weapons went dark. But Hale wasn't finished. "Prepare assault team," he ordered. Briggs blinked. "You're going down there?" Hale's eyes burned. "Yes, we take their command note ourselves." Minutes later, a Terran assault shuttle launched, Marcus Hale leading the charge personally. The shuttle screamed through the debris field, dodging flak and wreckage, slamming into the Nexus's outer spire. Hale was first through the breach, rifle blazing. His Marines followed, room by room, floor by floor, cutting down Korath defenders in brutal close quarters. In the command chamber, Warlord Jakor prepared his last stand. His elite guards ringed the room. The doors blew inward. Hale entered in silence, armor scorched, eyes cold as the void. Jakor bellowed a challenge, charging with twin plasma axes. Hale met him head-on, rifle empty, blade drawn. The duel was savage, steel against alien fury, but Jakor was driven by pride. Hale was driven by something colder, the memory of massacred colonies, of civilians butchered by the Korath war machine. He fought with grim, merciless purpose. When it ended, Jakor lay broken on the floor. Hale stood over him, breathing hard, blade dripping alien blood. "Your empire will fall," Hale said quietly. Jakor's last breath was a snarl of denial. Then nothing. An hour later, the Retribution withdrew from the burning wreck of the Nexus. Mission complete. Back aboard his ship, Hale stood once more on the observation deck, watching the fires consume the Vorkon station. Briggs approached. "We crippled their comms. Their core fleets won't coordinate for months." Hale nodded. "Good. Let them know. We are coming for all of it." Briggs frowned. "They'll retaliate hard for this." Hale's voice was a growl. "Let them. I want them angry. I want them desperate." He turned to the helm. "Plot new targets. We go deeper." And in the cold heart of Korath space, the message spread. The gray death comes. The humans are no longer prey. The smoke of the burned-out Vorkon Nexus hadn't even cleared before the first whispers of the raid echoed through Korath space. A Terran warship, one ship, had struck the heart of the Dominion's communications network and lived to tell it. The insult was too great to ignore, the fear spreading too fast. In the great War Council chambers of Korath Prime, the Supreme Lord listened to a dozen frantic voices speak of human treachery, of the insolence of this Captain Hale. But it was War Master Kortal who said nothing. He simply watched the reports in cold silence, studying every strike pattern, every movement of the Terran dreadnought. And when the others had shouted themselves hoarse, he finally spoke. "They have waged war upon us in our core." The chamber grew silent. "We do not match them ship for ship," Kortal continued. "We do not chase them like prey. We set the trap that will drown them." Aboard the UES Retribution, Marcus Hale was already planning his next strike. Their hit on Vorkon had thrown the Dominion's military command into chaos. Reports flooded in from Terran intelligence. Whole Korath fleets recalled from the front lines to protect core worlds. Panic rippling through sectors once deemed untouchable. Exactly what Hale wanted. He stood before the star map in his briefing room, Briggs and his senior officers arrayed around him. "They'll regroup quickly," Briggs said. "We've stirred the hornet's nest." Hale's expression didn't change. "Then we hit them again before they can." He pointed to a sector deep within Korath space, Jorath's Reach, a major fuel refinery complex, critical to the Dominion's remaining fleet logistics. "We cripple that next." The officers exchanged glances. It was an even riskier strike, deeper than they'd ever gone. But none of them questioned the order. Not after Theta Serpentis. Not after Vorkon. Under Marcus Hale, this was no longer a defensive war. It was a campaign of annihilation. But even as the Retribution plotted its next course, Kortal's trap was already being set. The Blood Reavers had failed. Now he would deploy something worse. Void Fangs, an ancient breed of Korath stealth cruisers, black as the void, silent, undetectable to most human sensors. Their captains were veterans of 100 shadow wars. Their sole mission, to hunt Hale's ship, to end the human threat. The next raid began like the others. Retribution dropped into Jorath's Reach under heavy stealth cover, her crew ready for a fight. Initial scans confirmed the target. Refineries and dockyards arrayed around a dying red star. Hale gave the order. "Engage! Full assault pattern." The Terran dreadnought surged forward, guns roaring. Within minutes, enemy defenses were in flames. Fuel silos ruptured, sending shockwaves through the orbital platforms. The Korath defenders broke and ran. Retribution owned the field once more. But then, the trap was sprung. Without warning, Void Fangs decloaked at extreme range, 6 in total, forming a net around the Terran ship. They attacked with no broadcast, no challenge, only death. Particle lances licked at the Retribution's shields. Magnetic mines forced emergency evasions. Alarms screamed through the ship. "Multiple hostiles! Stealth cruisers!" Briggs grabbed a console, eyes wide. "Sir, they're inside our sensor net. They've been waiting." Hale's voice was stone. "Brace! We fight through." The battle that followed was the most brutal yet. For the first time, the Retribution was truly outmatched, not in firepower, but in detection and positioning. Void Fangs flickered in and out of range, ghosts in the dark, slashing at the Terran ship from impossible angles. Below decks, damage reports poured in. Engineering crews fought fires across multiple compartments. Shield generators strained under constant bombardment. But on the bridge, Marcus Hale remained a pillar of ice. "We turn the net against them," he ordered. He called up a sector-wide gravimetric map, tracking not the ships, but their distortions in local space-time. They can't hide from gravity, he growled. Lock solutions, prepare full-bore firing arcs. One by one, the Void Fangs overextended, and when they did, Retribution's railguns struck with unerring precision. One enemy cruiser was gutted by a 3-shot burst, another lost shields and was finished by missile salvos. But the fight cost them. Retribution bled. Her outer armor was flayed open in multiple sectors. Life support flickered in forward compartments. The bridge rocked with every hit. Briggs staggered, blood running from a scalp wound. "2 more hostiles left," he shouted. Hale's voice cut through the chaos. "We finished them." With a sudden vector change, Retribution surged at full acceleration, barreling toward the remaining Void Fangs head-on. It was a move no Korath captain expected, a Terran warship going straight into the jaws of an ambush. But that was Hale. Always forward, never retreat. Caught off guard, one Void Fang drifted into a kill zone and was shredded by combined main battery fire. The last enemy cruiser disengaged, vanishing into the void. On the battered bridge, silence finally fell. Smoke hung thick. Crew moved like ghosts through the damage. Briggs wiped blood from his eyes. "They damn near got us, sir." Hale leaned heavily against his command chair, one hand slick with his own blood where shrapnel had torn his side. His voice was hoarse but unbroken. "But they didn't." He turned to the helm. "Get us out of this sector. Emergency jump to fallback point." Retribution limped toward deep space, engines flickering but still alive. Later, in the medbay, Hale sat on the edge of a surgical table, arm patched, ribs bound. Briggs stood nearby, face grim. "They're adapting, sir. The Void Fangs were different, smarter." Hale nodded slowly. "Kortal's work. He's learning." Briggs frowned. "We barely survived this one. If they bring more..." Hale's eyes burned. "Then we get stronger." He rose despite the pain. "We've bloodied them in their heart, Briggs. They won't let this stand. They'll throw everything they have next." A long silence. Then Briggs asked the unspoken question. "So, what do we do now?" Hale's reply was a low, deadly growl. "We go for the throat." He brought up a new star map, the core sectors of Korath Prime itself. "Next, we hit them where it hurts the most." And as word spread across the Dominion that the Retribution had once again survived the impossible, panic began to creep even into the halls of the Supreme Lord, because now they knew the humans would not stop, and their captain, this Marcus Hale, would not die easily. The stars of Korath Prime burned red with the weight of centuries. Their light fell upon a world of obsidian spires and iron cities, a planet built upon conquest and blood. No foreign fleet had ever entered its space. No alien had dared to strike at its black heart. Until now. Deep within the War Council chamber, the Supreme Lord stood before his generals, claws gripping the iron rail. 2 armadas broken. His voice echoed through the great chamber. Our core worlds raided, Nexus in flames, and still this human, this Hale, defies us. A dozen Korath warlords snarled in response, tails lashing the floor. "He will not stop," growled War Master Kortal, eyes burning. "He knows the truth now. Only death can end this war." The Supreme Lord bared his fangs. "Then we must deliver it. The next engagement will not be in the shadows. We will bring the full weight of the Dominion to bear." Kortal inclined his head. "I will command the vanguard. Let him come to us." But aboard the battered UES Retribution, Marcus Hale was already a step ahead. Repairs were rushed, weapons jury-rigged, armor plates welded in place by exhausted crews who had long since passed the point of fear. Every man and woman aboard that ship knew what came next. The final blow. and every one of them stood ready. In the command briefing, Hale addressed his officers. His side was still bandaged from the last fight, but he stood tall, unbroken. The holomap displayed Korath Prime, its orbital rings, fleet stations, and planetary defenses. Briggs exhaled slowly. "Sir, this is the heart of their empire. If we go in, there's no fallback, no reinforcements." Hale's gaze was steel. "We go in because they won't expect it. No species in the galaxy has ever dared to strike Korath Prime." He swept his eyes across the room. "But we are not any species. We are human, and we will show them." A grim smile passed between the officers. "What's the plan?" Briggs asked. Hale tapped a point on the orbital ring, the primary defense control station. "We breach their command systems, blind their planetary weapons. Once we cripple those, we strike the surface." Briggs blinked. "You want to hit the planet itself?" "Yes," Hale said coldly. "We're not here to send a message anymore. We're here to end this war." The jump was plotted, a direct burn into Korath Prime space, bypassing standard entry points, a suicide vector by most measures. But Hale didn't care. The enemy had tried to hunt him in the shadows. Now they would face him in the light. 3 days later, UES Retribution emerged from hyperspace, alone, wounded, and angry. Before her, Korath Prime filled the void, a world girded in rings of steel, its orbit crowded with warships. An entire home fleet waited, more than 500 capital ships, legions of fighters, stations bristling with guns, and at their center, Kortal's flagship, a dreadnought the size of a small moon. On the bridge, alarms howled as enemy locks painted the Retribution. "They're hailing us," Briggs said. "Put it through," Hale replied. The screen flared to life, revealing Kortal, scarred, armored, eyes gleaming with savage triumph. "So you come to die, human," he rumbled. "Fitting. You will be ended before my people." Hale's voice was ice. "I didn't come to die. I came to bury your empire." And with that, he cut the channel. "All hands, battle stations," Hale ordered. "We're going through." The Retribution surged forward, engines flaring. Enemy ships closed in, a tide of steel and plasma. The first wave of Korath cruisers launched missiles and particle beams, a wall of fire meant to vaporize any sane vessel. But the Terran dreadnought dove through it, weaving between incoming fire, shields flaring and recharging. Her guns spoke first, rail slugs piercing the lead cruisers, reducing them to burning wrecks. The enemy reacted, more ships closing the net. But Hale didn't falter. "Full speed. Target the control station." The battle became a brutal gauntlet. For every Korath ship that died, another filled its place. The Retribution's shields flickered dangerously, her hull bleeding atmosphere. Marines scrambled to seal hull breaches. Fires burned unchecked in several compartments. But still, she advanced. On the Korath flagship, Kortal watched in grim fascination. "Insane," one of his officers muttered. "They should have fled." "No," Kortal said softly. "This is not fear. This is war." He stood. "Ready my personal guard. The human will not reach the surface alive." But Marcus Hale had no intention of stopping. As the Retribution punched through the final defense line, he gave the order. "Prepare assault shuttles. We take the fight to the planet." With a daring break, the Terran dreadnought launched its shuttles, Hale leading the charge personally once again. Through a storm of enemy fire, the shuttles screamed toward the surface, punching through the upper atmosphere in trails of burning plasma. Korath Prime's capital city, Vrakor, was a fortress world in itself. Towering spires, endless gun emplacements, legions of ground troops. The Terran shuttles hit hard, disgorging Marines into the heart of enemy territory. and Marcus Hale led them, rifle in hand, armor battered, eyes blazing. The street fighting was brutal beyond anything seen before. Korath warriors fought with claws, blades, and heavy plasma cannons. But the human Marines fought with something more, the iron will of a species that refused extinction. Every block became a meat grinder. Hale's team advanced meter by meter, leaving a trail of broken bodies in their wake. Finally, they reached their objective. The Supreme Command Spire, the nerve center of Korath military coordination. But Kortal was waiting. The final battle was fought in the shadow of that spire. Hale's Marines breached the outer defenses, only to be met by Kortal's personal guard, elite warriors clad in black warplate. Blades clashed with rifles, plasma burned through steel, and in the midst of it, Marcus Hale faced Kortal himself. The Korath War Master was a titan, wielding a massive energy glaive. "You are strong, human," he growled, "but this is where your war ends." Hale's voice was low and deadly. "It ends when you fall." The duel was savage. Kortal's strikes could have shattered steel, but Hale dodged with brutal efficiency, fighting with every ounce of strength left in his bloodied frame. Blades rang, blood sprayed, and at last, Hale found the opening, a feint, a twist, and his blade drove deep through Kortal's chest. The War Master staggered, blood pouring from his wound. "Impossible," he gasped. Hale's voice was a whisper of steel. "You underestimated us, like all the rest." And with that, he drove the blade deeper, ending it. With Kortal's death, the remaining Korath defenders broke. The Terran Marines secured the command spire. The planetary defense grid went offline. Above, the Retribution broadcast the signal. "Korath Prime is neutralized. The Dominion is broken." In the ruins of the spire, Hale stood battered, his armor scorched and torn, face streaked with blood and grime, but his eyes burned with victory. Briggs limped to his side. "It's done, sir. They're falling back across the entire sector." Hale nodded slowly. "And they will remember this day. Forever." Later, as the first Terran reinforcements arrived, Hale stood once more at the observation deck of the Retribution, watching the dawn rise over the shattered spires of Korath Prime. Briggs approached quietly. "What now, sir?" Hale's voice was a low growl. "Now we rebuild. We prepare." He turned, eyes still hard. "Because the galaxy knows this. Humanity does not kneel, not to the Korath, not to anyone." And in the far reaches of space, as word spread of Korath Prime's fall, the stars themselves seemed to whisper a new truth. The age of human prey was over. The age of human war had begun. The galaxy was never meant to be peaceful. It was a cold, unforgiving place where only the strongest survived. The Zorath Dominion knew this better than anyone. For centuries they expanded ruthlessly, crushing weaker species under their iron grip. Planets fell one after another, entire civilizations wiped from existence. Their reign was absolute until they reached Earth. Humanity wasn't ready when the Zorath first struck. The initial assault devastated half of Earth's military forces. Cities burned, skies filled with ash, and the oceans boiled under relentless bombardment. Yet humans didn't break. They fought back with whatever they had: guerrilla tactics, improvised weapons, and sheer stubbornness. The Zorath didn't expect resistance, let alone one so fierce. The battle for Earth stretched into years. Then the unimaginable happened. Humanity won. Through innovation, sacrifice, and unity, they pushed the Zorath back, reclaimed their world, and became legends among the stars. The galaxy watched in shock as Earth rose from ashes to forge an armada. No longer prey, humanity sought out those who had been brutalized by the Zorath and offered an alliance. For the first time, the oppressed saw hope, a fighting chance against tyranny. Years passed, and the newly formed United Human Confederation amassed strength. They built massive warships and trained warriors with unyielding resolve. Humanity's armada became a beacon in the dark, patrolling trade routes, safeguarding planets, and dismantling Zorath outposts wherever they could. The message was clear: no more fear, no more submission. As word spread, the enslaved races rallied to humanity's side. Fragile alliances between once feuding species now solidified under Earth's banner. The Zorath could no longer divide and conquer. Their enemies stood united. Infuriated, the Dominion declared total war. One night, as the human flagship Valiant orbited the peaceful planet Nira, a distress signal cut through the void. Nira, a world barely capable of defending itself, was under attack. Hundreds of Zorath warships had appeared out of nowhere, ready to burn the planet to cinders. Captain Adrian Cole stood on the bridge of the Valiant, her steel-gray eyes scanning the tactical display. Red blips covered the screen, an overwhelming force. Beside her, Lieutenant Marlowe cursed under his breath. "Ma'am, they're sending a transmission," Marlowe said, adjusting his headset. "Put it through," Adrian ordered. The screen flickered, revealing the Zorath Supreme Commander. His scaled, imposing form filled the display, his slitted eyes narrowed with contempt. "Human," he sneered, "this world will burn, and your defiance will be buried with it. Stand down and let us take what is ours." Adrian remained calm. "This planet isn't yours. You have no right to it, and we won't let you slaughter innocents." The commander bared his fangs. "You overestimate your importance, Ape. Your little coalition crumbles today. Stand aside or be destroyed." Adrian glanced around at her crew, faces hardened with determination. There was no fear in their eyes, only resolve. She turned back to the screen. "Then come and try," she said. "You'll find humanity far less breakable than you remember." The transmission cut off, and the Zorath fleet advanced. Adrian knew what had to be done. She activated the fleet-wide comms. "To all ships, form a defensive perimeter around Nira. No one breaks through. Prepare fighters and charge all weapons. Today we stand as the final shield between this world and annihilation. Humanity does not retreat. We do not surrender. We hold the line." The crew erupted into motion, battle stations buzzing with activity. Adrian took a deep breath, calming her racing heart. She knew the odds. They were hopelessly outnumbered. But retreat wasn't an option, not when lives hung in the balance. As the first wave of Zorath fighters launched, the Valiant roared to life, unleashing a torrent of plasma fire. Human warships moved in tight formation, flanking the heavier cruisers and drawing enemy fire away from the surface. Explosions rocked the void, and the sky burned with streaks of blue and red. Adrian watched as one of their frigates, the Resolute, took a direct hit, its hull splitting apart in a fiery blaze. Her fists clenched, but there was no time to mourn. They had to push forward, no matter the cost. The Zorath were relentless, pressing their advantage, but humanity fought back with ruthless efficiency. For every ship lost, 2 more filled the gap. Adrian coordinated maneuvers, giving orders with unwavering conviction. As the battle raged on, a second wave of Zorath reinforcements dropped out of hyperspace, more ships than they could count. Marlowe glanced at her, worry etched on his face. "Captain, there's too many of them." Adrian gritted her teeth. "We hold, no matter what. We promised to protect this world, and that's what we'll do. Tell the Nira defense to prepare ground forces in case we're breached." With another deep breath, she watched the screen, knowing that humanity's legacy would either be forged here or be forgotten forever. The battle was chaos. Space itself seemed to be on fire as ships from both sides were engulfed in flames and debris. The Zorath pressed their attack with ruthless precision, but the human fleet held the line, refusing to back down. Adrienne barked orders, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. "Redirect power to forward shields. All gunnery crews focus fire on their lead destroyers." Lieutenant Marlowe coordinated the responses, his fingers dancing over the console as he relayed Adrienne's commands to the rest of the fleet. The Valiant surged forward, its cannons blazing as it carved through the enemy lines. But for every Zorath ship they destroyed, it seemed 3 more took its place. "Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission from the planet," Marlowe said, his voice tense. "Put it through," Adrienne replied, never taking her eyes off the tactical display. A hologram flickered to life, a Niran official, her pale green skin and wide eyes filled with terror. "Captain Cole, we're seeing enemy dropships entering the atmosphere. Our defense grid is compromised. Please, we can't—" The transmission cut off abruptly as a massive shockwave shook the Valiant. Adrienne swore under her breath and turned to Marlowe. "They're going for planetary invasion," she said, her mind racing. "They want to slaughter the population regardless of space superiority. Cowards!" "What's the plan, Captain?" Marlowe asked. Adrienne hesitated for just a moment, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. If they continued to hold the line, they might stop the fleet, but the ground invasion would still proceed. If they pulled back to protect the surface, the blockade would fall, and the Zorath would overwhelm them. "Split the fleet," she ordered. "Frigates and light cruisers, break formation and descend to assist planetary defense. All heavy ships and carriers maintain position and continue to engage the main fleet. We're not letting them through." "Acknowledged," Marlowe replied, sending the new orders. The formation shifted as the lighter ships peeled off and made their way toward the planet's surface. The Zorath took advantage of the gap, pressing forward with their larger vessels. Adrienne grit her teeth and activated the ship-wide intercom. "This is Captain Cole. We're about to be hit hard. I won't lie to you, the odds aren't good. But humanity didn't survive Earth's burning skies just to falter here. We're the last shield standing between Nira and genocide. We fight because they can't. We hold because no one else will. Give them hell." A fierce cheer erupted through the comms, bolstering morale as the crew steeled themselves for the next assault. The Valiant pushed ahead, leading the charge as plasma blasts lit up the void. One of the Zorath battleships broke formation and rammed straight into a human destroyer. The collision was catastrophic, both vessels erupting in a blinding explosion. Adrienne's heart twisted as familiar names on the tactical display blinked out one by one. "Captain, they're flanking us on the starboard side," Marlowe shouted. "Redirect the Ironclad and Sovereign to cover our right. Fire torpedo salvo at grid 3-5C and force them into crossfire." As the ships adjusted, Adrienne's mind raced, calculating every maneuver, every potential loss. The numbers didn't add up. They were running out of ships, running out of time. Desperation gnawed at her resolve, but she forced it down. The crew needed her strong, even if she felt the creeping edge of hopelessness. Suddenly, the sensors picked up a massive energy surge, something barreling toward them from hyperspace. Marlowe glanced at her, his face pale. "Reinforcements?" he asked hopefully. Adrienne shook her head. "No. Zorath doesn't use energy signatures like that." The viewscreen lit up as a new fleet dropped out of hyperspace, sleek, dark-hulled ships gliding into formation behind the human armada. Adrienne recognized the markings instantly. The Vendaran coalition. Allies. They'd come. The Vendaran flagship hailed them, and Adrienne accepted the transmission. A tall, imposing alien figure appeared, his crystalline features shimmering with determination. "Captain Cole," he greeted with a firm nod. "We received your distress signal and brought every warship available. Nira will not fall." A wave of relief washed over Adrian, but she kept her composure. "Glad to see you, Admiral Reth. We're getting hammered out here." "Your ships have held beyond expectation," Reth replied. "Let us take the forward assault. You've bought us the time to strike decisively." With that, the Venderan ships surged ahead, their advanced particle cannons tearing through the Zorath lines. The sudden shift in power rattled the Dominion fleet, and their formation crumbled under the combined might of humanity and its allies. Adrian allowed herself a breath, just one, as the tide of battle shifted. The Zorath began to retreat, their battered ships fleeing into hyperspace. Cheers erupted across the Valiant, but Adrian knew it wasn't over yet. "Marlowe, status on the planet?" "Ground forces are still engaged, but our frigates are providing support. Niran militias are holding key points. It's brutal, but they're managing." Adrian nodded. "Coordinate with Reth to send reinforcements to the surface. We can't let the ground war drag on. Patch me through to Planetary Command." As the connection established, she took another steadying breath. Nira wasn't safe yet, but they'd bought precious time. The Zorath's iron fist had been shattered here, at least for now. But Adrian couldn't forget the cost. The ships and crews lost, the civilians still under siege below. Victory wasn't enough. They needed to ensure the Zorath would never dare to threaten another world again. The battle was just the beginning, and Adrian knew she wouldn't rest until the Zorath Dominion was nothing but a bitter memory. The aftermath of the space battle left the void littered with the twisted remains of Zorath warships, drifting like silent ghosts in the darkness. The Venderan fleet maintained position around Nira, scanning for any signs of returning enemies. Adrian sat at her command console, exhaustion gnawing at her bones. But her mind remained sharp. There was still work to be done. "Damage report," she ordered, leaning back and wiping sweat from her brow. Marlowe pulled up the data, his voice grim. "We've lost 6 ships, including the Resolute and Ironclad. Casualty estimates are in the hundreds. Structural damage to the Valiant's starboard thrusters and primary reactor housing. Repairs are underway." Adrian nodded, the weight of those losses settling on her shoulders. She couldn't afford to grieve. Not yet. Not while people were still fighting for their lives on the surface. A message chimed on her console. A transmission from Admiral Reth. Adrian accepted it, and his crystalline visage appeared on the display. "Captain Cole, our scouts report that the Zorath ground forces are concentrated near Nira's capital city," Reth said. "They're fortifying positions and using civilians as human shields." Adrian clenched her fists. "Cowardly bastards. Do you have forces ready to support the counterattack?" Reth nodded. "My ground units are mobilizing. Your frigates are already making precision strikes on enemy positions, but the risk to civilians is high. We must coordinate carefully." Adrian frowned, weighing the options. "We can't risk orbital bombardment, not with hostages involved. We'll need to insert tactical squads to break the defensive lines from within." A tactical alert sounded, and Marlowe glanced at his screen, eyes widening. "Captain, we're receiving a priority message from the surface. It's Commander Ellison of the Resolute survivors. Patching it through." The screen shifted to reveal a battered, blood-stained man leaning against a ruined wall, his armor scorched and cracked. His breathing was ragged, but his eyes were fierce. "Captain." "Cole," he gasped. "We made it to the capital outskirts. Zorath are holed up in the old government complex. They've rigged explosives, planning to level the entire district if we get too close." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Ellison, are you and your men combat ready?" He gave a weak grin. "We're still breathing, ma'am. That's enough. But we're pinned down, and they've got heavy artillery on the rooftops. If we don't take those out, any approach is a death sentence. Adrian turned to Marlowe. Get me tactical teams and a dropship. We're going down there to finish this. Captain? Marlowe looked stunned. You're personally leading the assault? Adrian gave him a hard look. I'm not sending anyone into that meat grinder without being there myself. Get it done. Marlowe hesitated, but nodded, relaying the orders. Adrian moved to the armory, donning her combat gear with practiced efficiency. As she secured her rifle, Marlowe approached, his expression conflicted. You're sure about this? He asked quietly. I've never been more sure, she replied. This isn't just about Nira. It's about making sure the Zorath know that humanity doesn't just fight from orbit. We fight on the ground, face to face, and we don't back down. He gave a small nod, then saluted. Good luck, Captain. Minutes later, Adrian boarded the dropship alongside an elite squad of Marines. As the vessel launched, she looked at the determined faces around her. Each one knew the risks, and each one was prepared to die if it meant saving the civilians below. The descent was turbulent, plasma fire streaking past as the dropship weaved through the chaos. Explosions rumbled from the cityscape, and smoke plumed into the sky. Adrian steadied herself, gripping the overhead railing. Lieutenant Briggs, the squad leader, gave her a nod. We hit hard, we hit fast. Priority is neutralizing those rooftop cannons so our forces can push in. Adrian agreed. Once the artillery's down, we secure the hostages and disable the explosives. No mistakes, no casualties. The dropship touched down amid rubble and scorched earth. The Marines poured out, forming a defensive perimeter as Adrian scanned the area. Zorath soldiers immediately opened fire from the surrounding buildings, and the humans retaliated with ruthless precision. Adrian ducked behind a fallen column, barking orders. Briggs, take your team and hit the right flank. I'll move with Beta Squad to the left and sweep through the alleys. We'll meet at the central tower. Aye, Captain, Briggs replied, motioning his squad forward. As Adrian led her team through the shattered streets, the Zorath resistance intensified. They fought like cornered animals, desperate and brutal. Adrian took down a sniper perched on a broken archway, her rifle precise and unyielding. The Marines moved in tandem, covering each other as they pushed forward. Suddenly, a scream echoed from a nearby building. Adrian motioned for silence, then crept toward the sound. Peering through a cracked window, she saw civilians, men, women, and children huddled in fear as a Zorath officer barked orders, wiring charges to the foundation pillars. She signaled her team and whispered, "On my mark, breach and clear. No collateral damage." With a sharp nod, the Marines moved into position. Adrian counted down with her fingers. 3, 2, 1, then kicked in the door. Gunfire erupted, and the Zorath barely had time to react before being cut down. One officer tried to detonate his charges, but Adrian's shot pierced his skull before his claw hit the trigger. Once the room was secured, Adrian moved to the terrified civilians, her voice calm and steady. "You're safe now. Stay low and move toward the extraction point with Beta Squad. We'll handle the rest." A woman clutched her child, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you. Thank you so much." Adrian gave a firm nod and moved out, signaling Briggs to report in. The rooftop artillery was down, and with the explosives neutralized, the push into the central complex could begin. With determination burning in her veins, Adrian prepared for the final assault. The Zorath had made one fatal mistake. They underestimated humanity's will to fight, even on alien soil. And Adrian would make sure they paid for it. Adrian pushed forward with her team, navigating the crumbling alleys and shattered streets of Nira's capital. Smoke hung thick in the air, and the distant rumble of explosions painted the sky in eerie shades of orange and red. Her comm crackled to life as Briggs reported in. "Captain, we've taken the right flank. Artillery emplacements are secured and disabled. Zorath resistance is scattered, but they're regrouping near the central tower," Briggs said, his voice firm but cautious. Adrian nodded, wiping sweat from her brow. "Copy that. We're approaching from the left. Hold your position and wait for the signal." She turned to her squad, their faces streaked with dirt and determination. "This is it. The central tower is their last holdout. They'll fight like hell to keep it. We hit hard and fast. No time for hesitation." A chorus of affirmatives echoed back. Adrian signaled them to move, weaving through rubble-strewn paths as they made their way toward the imposing structure ahead. The tower loomed like a monolith, its spire piercing the smoke-filled sky. Zorath soldiers guarded the entrance, weapons drawn, eyes sharp. Adrian gestured for the squad to take cover behind a collapsed archway, formulating a quick plan. She eyed the narrow path leading to the tower, a choke point, no doubt rigged with traps. "Davies, Martinez, flank around the north side and draw their attention. Weaver, with me, we'll breach from the south entrance while they're distracted," Adrian whispered. They moved like shadows, silent and efficient. As Davies opened fire from the north, the guards snapped to attention, returning fire and abandoning their post. Adrian took the opportunity, slipping around to the southern entry, where Weaver set a charge on the reinforced door. "Ready?" Weaver whispered, his hands steady despite the tension. Adrian gave a curt nod. "Do it!" The door blasted inward, and Adrian surged forward, weapon raised. Inside, chaos erupted as the Zorath scrambled to react. She picked her targets with brutal precision, one to the left, one by the staircase, a third behind the sandbag barrier. Weaver moved beside her, covering her flank as they cleared the room. More troops poured in from the adjacent corridors, and Adrian dropped to one knee, her rifle barking relentlessly. Weaver cursed as a plasma bolt grazed his shoulder, but he pushed through the pain, taking down 2 charging Zorath with his sidearm. As the last enemy fell, Adrian hurried over, inspecting Weaver's wound. "You good to keep going?" He grimaced but nodded. "Just a scratch, ma'am. Nothing to worry about." She gave him a quick pat on the shoulder and moved deeper into the complex. Briggs's voice crackled over the comms. "Captain, we've breached the north side. They're falling back toward the central chamber. Be advised. Our scouts detected high-energy signatures. They're powering up something big." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "Acknowledged. Move in and converge on the main hall. We'll cut them off." She picked up the pace, her boots pounding against the cracked tiles as they advanced. The walls were scorched and pocked with bullet holes, a grim reminder of the desperation seeping through the Zorath ranks. They knew they were losing. Adrian felt a bitter satisfaction in that. As they reached the central chamber doors, a heavy, reinforced barrier blocked their way. Weaver examined the control panel, shaking his head. "Looks like they've locked it down tight. I can hack it, but it'll take a few minutes." Adrian cursed under her breath. "Do it. Briggs, we're at the central chamber, but it's locked down. How's your team?" "We're right outside the opposite entrance," Briggs replied. "Got charges set, ready to blow on your mark." "Hold off for now. Let's see if we can bypass this without blowing the structure apart," Adrian replied. Weaver worked his magic, fingers flying over the cracked screen, bypassing security protocols one after another. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he concentrated. Adrian kept her rifle trained on the corridor, listening intently for movement. A sudden thud reverberated through the floor, and a low hum filled the air. Adrian's stomach twisted with dread. "Weaver, faster! They're powering up whatever weapon they have in there." "I'm on it, Captain. Almost there," he muttered, sparks flying from the panel. Suddenly, the door hissed and slid open, revealing the grand chamber beyond. At the far end stood a massive Zorath war machine, an artillery cannon mounted on a mobile platform, thrumming with energy. Dozens of Zorath soldiers manned control stations, while their commander barked orders from a raised platform. Adrian's eyes widened. They're targeting the planetary core. If that thing fires, Nira's gone. No time to think. She raised her rifle and fired at the control panel on the cannon, sparks and smoke erupting from it. The Zorath commander snarled, pointing at her, and his soldiers opened fire. "Go loud!" Adrian shouted, charging into the room with her squad. Briggs's team breached the opposite entrance simultaneously, catching the Zorath in a deadly crossfire. Plasma bolts and kinetic rounds filled the air, the sound deafening and chaotic. Adrian pushed forward, taking cover behind a massive support beam. Weaver lobbed a flash grenade, blinding the nearest group of soldiers, and they cut them down without mercy. Adrian's eyes locked onto the commander, who barked frantic orders as the cannon continued to power up. "Weaver, find a way to shut that thing down," Adrian ordered. "I'm on it," he replied, dashing for the nearest console. The commander spotted him and drew a blade, leaping from the platform with a predatory grace. Adrian intercepted him, catching his downward strike with her rifle, then driving her knee into his gut. The Zorath roared and swung wildly, but Adrian ducked under his blade, sweeping his legs out from under him. Before he could recover, she slammed the butt of her rifle into his skull, cracking his carapace. He lashed out with his claws, slicing across her forearm, but she didn't relent. Grabbing his arm, she twisted it until she heard the bone snap, then fired point-blank into his chest. The commander collapsed, gurgling his last breath. Adrian wiped the blood from her face, turning to see Weaver desperately working on the console. "Hurry!" she barked. Weaver grimaced. "It's too late. The charge is building exponentially. We can't stop it from here." Adrian's heart pounded. There was no time to evacuate the city. She grabbed her comm. "All units, brace for impact. This is it." And then, the cannon fired. The cannon's beam tore through the air with a deafening roar, a searing pillar of energy lancing toward the sky. Adrian braced herself, heart hammering, knowing that the blast would hit the planetary core and tear Nira apart. But just as the beam reached its apex, something unimaginable happened. A second beam, brilliant and shimmering with a bluish hue, intercepted it mid-air. The collision sent shockwaves rippling across the sky, and the Zorath energy blast dissipated, scattering like fractured glass. Adrian stared, breathless and confused. "What the hell just happened?" she whispered. Weaver checked his handheld scanner, eyes wide. "That wasn't us." "Ma'am, it's coming from orbit." Adrian switched her comm to the fleet channel. "Valiant, report. What's going on up there?" Marlowe's voice came through, shaky but triumphant. "Captain, you won't believe this. Admiral Reth coordinated with our tech crews to reconfigure the Vendaran flagship's primary cannon. They used it to counter the energy surge from the surface." Adrian's breath came out in a shuddering gasp of relief. "Damn. That was too close. Good work, Marlowe. Keep monitoring for any more surges." "Yes, ma'am," he replied. Adrian looked around the chamber. The surviving Zorath soldiers had either fled or lay dead on the floor. The war machine stood motionless, its power core dimmed and inert. The Marines were catching their breath, some slumping to the ground in exhaustion. She wiped her face with a torn sleeve and turned to Weaver. "Can you disable the rest of the power systems? Make sure nothing like that happens again." He nodded. "Give me a minute, Captain. I'll make sure this thing never fires again." Adrian activated her comm, switching to the local command channel. "Briggs, report." His voice came back, steady but weary. "Area secure, Captain. We're sweeping the lower levels, but it looks like the rest of the Zorath forces have either surrendered or scattered. City defenses are regaining control. Adrian exhaled slowly. Understood. Regroup at the primary junction and secure the remaining hostages. We'll mop up any stragglers. Good work out there, Briggs. Thank you, ma'am. Wouldn't have made it without your lead, he replied. Adrian gave a tired smile, but it quickly faded as she caught sight of the civilians who had been huddled in fear just moments ago. A young Niran boy peeked out from behind a pillar, his wide, luminescent eyes filled with awe and caution. Adrian knelt down, lowering her weapon to appear less intimidating. It's over, she said gently. You're safe now. The boy hesitated before stepping closer, and a woman, his mother by the look of her, rushed forward and pulled him into a tight embrace. The other civilians slowly emerged from hiding, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and gratitude. One of the elders approached Adrian, bowing his head. We thought it was the end, he said, voice trembling. We've never seen anyone fight back like that. You saved us. Saved all of Nira. Adrian gave a somber nod. We did what we had to. No one deserves to live in fear of monsters like the Zorath. Humanity made a promise to protect those who can't protect themselves. Tears glistened in the elder's eyes as he clasped her hand with both of his. You are welcome on Nira as heroes. Always. Adrian gave a faint, tired smile, but before she could respond, her calm crackled again. Marlowe's voice was filled with urgency. Captain, you need to see this. I'm patching a live feed through to your visor. A holographic display appeared before her eyes, showing a massive concentration of Zorath warships at the edge of the system, an armada even larger than before. Adrian's heart sank. They're regrouping, she muttered. Marlowe hesitated. Not just regrouping. They're bringing in everything they've got. Long-range scans show at least 4 dreadnoughts and dozens of heavy cruisers. It's a final push, Captain. Adrian felt a cold chill run down her spine. The Zorath weren't just trying to reclaim Nira. They intended to annihilate it entirely. A desperate last stand. She took a deep breath, forcing her fear down. Marlowe, alert Admiral Reth. Prepare all ships for immediate engagement. Activate planetary shields and focus on evacuating the wounded. We're not giving up this ground. Yes, ma'am, Marlowe replied, though his voice betrayed a hint of doubt. Adrian switched channels to address the entire fleet. This is Captain Cole to all units. The Zorath are preparing one final assault. They know they're losing, and they're throwing everything they've got at us. I know you're tired. I know we've lost good people today, but we can't falter. Not now. Nira stands because of your courage. Let's make sure it stays that way. The comms erupted in affirmations and battle cries, soldiers rallying to her words. Adrian clenched her fists, determination surging through her veins. Weaver, get this place secured and set up a remote detonation on that cannon. If they try to reactivate it, I want it vaporized, she ordered. He gave her a firm nod. Understood, Captain. It'll be ready in 5. Adrian stood up, her gaze shifting to the sky, where the looming threat approached. The people of Nira looked to her with a mixture of hope and fear. She couldn't let them see her doubt. Walking over to the boy and his mother, she knelt down and managed a reassuring smile. We're going to protect you. I promise. The boy looked at her with a fierce determination that almost made her heart ache. You're not afraid, are you? He asked. She hesitated just a moment, then shook her head. Not while you're counting on me. We've come too far to lose now. Standing tall, Adrian activated her comm one last time. All ground forces, fall back to secure positions and prepare for bombardment. If this is where we make our stand, then we'll make damn sure the Zorath remember why humanity is never underestimated. As the dark silhouettes of the incoming fleet grew on the horizon, Adrian knew they were on the edge of either victory or annihilation. One last battle. One final shield between innocence and extinction. And she wasn't about to let that shield break. Adrian barely had a moment to catch her breath before the comms lit up again with Marlowe's urgent voice. "Captain, the Zorath Armada has entered the inner system. They're ignoring our outer defense perimeter and heading straight for Nira. Admiral Reth is mobilizing the Coalition fleet to intercept." Adrian nodded grimly. "Understood. Tell Reth we'll hold the ground no matter what. Send every combat-ready ship to intercept their approach. We can't let them make landfall." She switched to the local ground channel. "All units, this is Captain Cole. Prepare for aerial bombardment and possible ground assault. Fortify positions and make every shot count. This is it. The final stand." The troops acknowledged her command, and Adrian turned her gaze skyward, where the first glimmers of the enemy fleet were visible even through the smoke and haze. The tension was suffocating, but she kept her shoulders straight, refusing to let fear seep through her calm facade. Weaver approached, wiping soot from his face. "Charges are set on the cannon, Captain. One trigger, and it'll be scrap metal." "Good," Adrian replied. "Have the engineers rig the perimeter with everything they've got. If the Zorath hit the ground, I want them walking into a minefield." Weaver saluted and moved out, rallying the tech teams. Adrian checked her weapon, tightening the straps of her armor. A few surviving civilians had gathered nearby, their eyes reflecting both gratitude and apprehension. She offered them a reassuring nod. "You've done more than anyone could ask," said the elder from earlier, his hands trembling as he spoke. "No matter what happens, we'll never forget how humanity stood for us." Adrian forced a smile. "We're not done yet. Stay inside and keep low. If we fall back, follow the evacuation route to the lower tunnels." The elder gave a solemn nod before leading his people to safer ground. Adrian took a steadying breath, her mind racing with battle plans. She had faced death before, but never like this, not with so many lives hanging in the balance. The sky rumbled with the sound of energy discharges as the first wave of Zorath fighters broke through the atmosphere. Coalition gunships soared up to meet them, and the air erupted with tracer fire and plasma bursts. One fighter spiraled out of control, crashing into a crumbling building just 2 blocks away. Adrian activated her comm. "Briggs, what's the situation at the East Gate?" "Getting hammered, Captain," Briggs shouted over the sound of gunfire. "Zorath drop pods are hitting our lines. We're holding, but just barely." Adrian cursed under her breath. "Reinforcements are on the way. Hold your ground." A massive explosion rocked the western sector, and Marlowe's voice came through the comms. "Captain, one of the dreadnoughts just launched a kinetic bombardment. The western trench is gone." Adrian's heart twisted painfully. "Casualties?" "Unknown. But it doesn't look good," Marlowe replied, his voice tight. The battle overhead intensified as Admiral Reth's ships closed with the Zorath fleet, exchanging devastating broadsides. The sky was a kaleidoscope of burning wreckage and bright energy pulses. Despite the coalition's resistance, the enemy armada pressed forward relentlessly, driven by sheer desperation and fury. A loud boom snapped Adrian's attention back to the ground fight. A Zorath assault mech crashed through a barricade, plasma cannons blazing. Adrian fired a burst, but the rounds pinged harmlessly off its armor. "Take that thing down!" she shouted, signaling her squad to concentrate fire. Rocket launchers fired from rooftops, striking the mech's legs and sending. Adrian charged forward, closing the distance before the pilot could react. She vaulted onto its chassis and ripped open the access panel, jamming a grenade inside. Leaping clear, she barely hit the ground before the explosion tore the mech apart. She didn't have time to catch her breath before a swarm of Zorath infantry surged forward, driven by frenzy and desperation. The Marines met them with disciplined volleys, but the sheer numbers threatened to overwhelm. Briggs's voice came through again, strained and ragged. "Captain, they're breaking through on the east side. We need support." Adrian gritted her teeth. "I'm on my way. Weaver, secure the central tower and make sure nothing gets through. If it looks like we're losing ground, blow the cannon." Weaver hesitated. "But Captain..." "That's an order," Adrian snapped, more harshly than intended. Weaver gave a sharp nod and moved to follow through. Running through the debris-filled streets, Adrian made her way to the eastern perimeter. The sight was grim. Corpses littered the ground, and the survivors were desperately fighting to hold back the tide of Zorath infantry. She spotted Briggs, blood streaking his face as he fired from behind a makeshift barricade. Adrian slid into cover beside him. "Status?" she barked. He shook his head, teeth gritted. "They just keep coming, Captain. I don't know how much longer we can hold." Adrian forced herself to think, her mind racing. They couldn't hold out against such overwhelming numbers. There was only one option left. "Marlowe," she called over the comm, "prepare an orbital strike on the eastern gate." Silence followed for a heartbeat. "Captain, our own troops are down there." Adrian's jaw tightened. "I know, but if the Zorath break through, Nira falls. Set the coordinates. Give me 60 seconds to get our people clear." "Understood," Marlowe replied, voice thick with reluctance. Adrian grabbed Briggs by the shoulder. "Pull back. Now we're calling down an orbital strike." His eyes widened with shock, but he didn't argue. "You heard the captain. Fall back. Move." As the troops retreated, Adrian covered their exit, laying down suppressive fire as the Zorath charged. One managed to get close, its blade swinging for her throat, but Briggs shot it down just in time. They made it to a safe distance, and Adrian gave the final order. "Valiant, fire at will." High above, the Valiant's main cannon discharged, a blinding beam lancing through the atmosphere and slamming into the ground. The shockwave sent dust and ash billowing in every direction, and the Zorath vanguard was obliterated in a single fiery instant. The survivors of Adrian's squad looked on in stunned silence as the smoke cleared, revealing nothing but scorched earth where the enemy had once been. Adrian lowered her rifle, shoulders sagging with exhaustion and guilt. The battle wasn't over. The sky still burned with the remnants of the Zorath fleet. But the line had held. Barely. Adrian knew this was just one victory in a long, brutal war. The Zorath would keep coming, desperate to reclaim their dominance. But as long as humanity had warriors like those who fought today, determined, fearless, and unyielding, the galaxy would know one undeniable truth. Humanity didn't break. They fought, they bled, and they stood as the final shield when no one else could. Adrian took a shaky breath, pushing down her grief. There would be time to mourn later. For now, survival was enough. The battle's aftermath left Nira scarred but standing. Smoke hung over the ruined cityscape, and the air was thick with the acrid scent of plasma burns and scorched metal. Adrian surveyed the devastation from the central tower, her heart heavy with the cost of victory. The Zorath armada had been shattered, and what remained of their forces had fled into the void. Admiral Reth's voice came through her comm, steady but solemn. "Captain Cole, we've confirmed it. Zorath forces are in full retreat. We're monitoring their exit trajectory, but it looks like they've given up on Nira. You did it." Adrian didn't smile. "We did it. Your reinforcements saved our asses out there. How's the fleet?" "Battered but functional," Reth replied. "We've lost several ships, but the core of our forces remains intact. Repairs are already underway. The people of Nira owe you their lives." Adrian nodded, trying to let the relief sink in, but it felt hollow with the weight of so many lost lives pressing down on her. She turned to see Briggs approaching, his arm bandaged and his face smeared with soot. "They're starting to dig through the rubble," he said. "Survivors are coming out, and we're setting up medical tents in the safe zones. Marlowe's coordinating aid drops." "Good," Adrian replied, her voice subdued. "Make sure they get priority. We'll handle the cleanup after everyone's safe." Briggs hesitated, studying her weary expression. "Captain, we did it. We held the line." Adrian gave a faint nod. "Yeah, but at what cost?" He didn't answer, knowing she wasn't looking for reassurance. He just gave her a nod of respect and headed back to help with the recovery efforts. Adrian lingered at the tower, letting the grim reality settle around her. Victory had always been uncertain, and now that it was achieved, it felt almost surreal. Weaver approached, his face showing the same exhaustion that everyone shared. "The cannon's been disarmed and dismantled. I made sure nothing is left that could be used against us." "Good work," Adrian said. She took a long breath, letting the tension ease just a fraction. "And the civilian casualties?" "Lower than we feared, thanks to the early evacuation orders. Still, too many didn't make it," Weaver replied, his eyes downcast. Adrian placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did well today. Everyone did. It's hard to see it now, but we made a difference. We protected more than just this planet. We showed the galaxy that the Zorath can be beaten." A small, bitter smile crossed Weaver's face. "Never thought I'd live to see the day. Humanity standing as the shield for other worlds. It's ironic." Adrian gave a grim chuckle. "Yeah, we used to be the ones needing protection. Now we're the ones holding the line." A sudden chime interrupted them, an incoming broadcast. Adrian tapped her comm, and Marlowe's voice came through, sounding almost celebratory. "Captain, you'll want to see this. Patching it through to your visor." A holographic display appeared before her, showing a transmission from a news network within the coalition. The headline blazed across the screen. "Humanity leads unprecedented victory against the Zorath. Nira saved." The report detailed how the combined human and Vendarin forces had not only held off the Zorath armada, but forced them into a full retreat. Scenes of grateful civilians, cheering Marines, and damaged but resilient warships filled the broadcast. Adrian's image appeared on the screen, labeled as the Defender of Nira. Weaver let out a low whistle. "Guess you're famous now, Captain." Adrian just shook her head, a mixture of pride and sorrow in her eyes. "Fame doesn't bring back the fallen. But if this shows the galaxy that we're willing to fight, that we won't let tyranny stand, maybe it's worth it." She closed the broadcast, leaning against the cracked railing and looking out over the battered city. Somewhere among the ruins, civilians were beginning to emerge, cautious but hopeful. Children clung to their parents, and weary soldiers shared handshakes and solemn words of gratitude. Marlowe appeared at her side, giving a weary salute. "Admiral Reth's requesting a full debrief. Wants to discuss forming a permanent defense alliance. Looks like our little stunt here shook the galaxy up." Adrian couldn't help but smile faintly. "Good. Let them know humanity isn't just a story about survivors anymore. We're protectors now. If anyone threatens the innocent, they'll know who they're up against." Marlowe grinned. "Hell yeah. We made a statement today. The Zorath will think twice before pushing their luck again." Adrian didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked up at the sky, where the last remnants of the Zorath fleet vanished into the void. The fight wasn't over. Not entirely. The Dominion would regroup, rebuild, and likely seek revenge. But this battle had proven one undeniable truth. Humanity wasn't just another species to be conquered. They were warriors, defenders, and allies worth standing beside. As dawn broke over the ruined city of Nira, painting the sky in hues of red and gold, Adrian took a long breath and let herself feel a flicker of hope. They had stood as the final shield, and they hadn't broken. She knew there would be more battles, more sacrifices, and more pain. But for now, they had won. And as long as humanity stood united with its allies, the galaxy would never forget the day they made their stand and refused to bow to tyranny. With a resolute heart and a fierce sense of purpose, Captain Adrian Cole turned from the shattered tower and prepared to lead her people into whatever challenges lay ahead. Because that was what humanity did. They fought, they survived, and they defended those who couldn't defend themselves. And that was the legacy they would leave behind.